Hello, I'm Bob Lancer, and the purpose of this show is to lead you into the life you truly want to be living. It is also about helping you to better understand and relate with others, especially the children in your life, in support of their great potential. So this show is for anyone who wants to live with more peace and purpose and positive power to soar into the fulfillment of our greatest promise. Anxiety draws you into what you feel anxious about. Discouragement draws you into what you feel discouraged over. In both instances, you consciously or unconsciously envision yourself headed into a life that you want to avoid. In any circumstances where you feel either of these painful states, make it your first priority to free yourself internally. Do that before you attempt to free yourself from the circumstances that trigger those painful feelings. Otherwise, no matter how hard you work to get yourself out, you get yourself more deeply into the circumstances you want to avoid. Anxiety and discouragement form your imaginative capacity, for that is what emotional states do. Because you experience as real whatever you vividly imagine to be real, you effectively place yourself in the experience of circumstances that you believe yourself to be in. And yet, you may actually be in a far more advantageous position than you realize, and on your way to your greatest hopes being realized while you dwell in the visions wrought by anxious or discouraged feelings. You then literally remove yourself from the stream of events leading you in the direction that you want to go in. And you place yourself in a stream carrying you in the exact opposite direction. Living free of anxiety and discouragement proves simpler and easier than most realize. When you focus your attention upon the present state of your feeling, you not only sense how you feel, but you also can sense how to release yourself by small degrees from a painful, unhappy emotional state. You can simply let go of the painful feeling little by little and find your way into peace. Our challenge here is redirecting the focus of our attention from the vision wrought by anxiety and discouragement, and focusing our attention on the way that we feel. This requires very alert vigilance over the focus of your attention. You have to be aware of what you are paying attention to if you would direct the focus of your attention. Another challenge here is the common belief that how you feel about your circumstances is based on your circumstances as they are, not on how you mentally envision them to be. Much of our thinking occurs unconsciously. We don't realize that we're thinking when we're thinking, and we respond to our thoughts as though they are reality. For instance, you might think of your child behaving in a way that causes your heart to overflow with love. In that moment, you will believe that your child is whom you imagine your child to be. But then, when you arrive home from a long day of work, and your child behaves in a manner you find disturbing, you might wonder, who is this child? What happened to my beautiful angel? Then, your mental reflections of your child portray him as a nuisance, as a vicious child, as a child who does not care about others. As one practices becoming more aware of one's thinking, one discovers the great creative power of thinking. You bring about what you think about. You can actually see that, not just believe it. You see, for instance, that thinking of your child as loving places you in the experience of having a loving child. That thinking of your child as uncaring about others places you in the experience of having an uncaring child. Beyond this, you then begin relating to your child in a manner consistent with your mental vision of him. You begin treating him like an uncaring child, which ends up discouraging him from expressing his caring side, so that your mental visions become self-fulfilling prophecies. One of our major tasks in life, if we are to live life to the fullest, is to harness the vast creative power of our minds. Instead of permitting circumstances to dictate what you think, you can direct your mind to dictate your circumstances. The parent who notices himself resentfully thinking of his child as uncaring can intentionally let go of the thought in order to avoid contributing to that possibility becoming a reality. The more attention you give to a thought, the more reality you give to that thought. By redirecting the focus of your attention from what you think to how you feel, you can avoid giving more reality to a thought that you do not want to live in. Your feelings shape your thoughts. When you feel inspired, encouraged, hopeful, you envision scenes in your head that support those feelings. When you feel anxious, discouraged, or frustrated, your mind engages in mental scenes that support those feelings. To shift your thinking, shift your feeling. And you can do this by redirecting your attention from what you are thinking onto what you are feeling. Then you can gradually improve how you feel, and by doing so, liberate your mind from thinking that sends you into the very circumstances that you want to escape or avoid. Before one can effectively direct the creative power of the mind, one must experience a profound awakening. An awakening from the dream that circumstances are the cause of how you think about your circumstances. An awakening from the dream that when you think about your circumstances, you are actually looking directly at things as they are, rather than at a mental reflection. As long as you believe that your circumstances produce your thoughts about your circumstances, you cannot use your thought to produce the circumstances that you want. As long as you believe that viewing your thoughts is the same as directly viewing reality, you cannot withdraw from the thoughts that you do not want to live in. Recognize the story about your life that you live inside your head. You can release from the tragic stories that feed your discouragement, anxiety, and humiliation. When you see your story as your story, you can let it go, particularly when you see how poorly it makes you feel. Paying close attention to your thoughts will reveal how much you react to the story in your head, and how much you have related with that story as your inescapable reality. When you tell yourself that your life is not what you want it to be, and you envision your life as you don't want it to be, you are living in that life. What you tell yourself about yourself, the vision of your life that you hold, is like a suit that you can try on. If it doesn't fit you, you don't have to buy it. Whatever you believe to be true about your life is, after all, just a belief. You can discard beliefs that aren't working. But first you have to recognize that it's a belief that you're reacting to, not reality. And the way to recognize that is by paying attention to your thoughts and to your feelings, so that you can wake up and recognize when you are having a feeling in response to nothing but a thought. We face two challenges when attempting to release ourselves from the tragic life stories that keep us feeling down, lost, and out of control: unconsciousness and attachment. Pay close attention to your thoughts to recognize the story about your life that you are gazing upon within, and its impact upon you emotionally and physically. Become conscious of the fact that it is just a story, an internal movie of your life that you produce. The more conscious you are of your inner world, the world of your thoughts and feelings, the more quickly and easily you can leave your sad life stories. Leave them behind and enter the joy of creation. Before we examine the joy of creation, we need to deal with the second challenge facing one who wants freedom from a tragic life story. When you begin to pay attention to your thoughts with the intention of waking up to reality, you discover a feeling of temptation in connection with your sad life story. It attracts you. A part of you desires to dwell in it, to wallow in it. Feeling sorry for ourselves feels somewhat like self-nurturing. It's like receiving sympathy from another person who pities our plight. You have to choose between the comforting feeling of sympathy for your sad story and your liberation from that sad story. What motivates us to let go of our sad story is the increasing drain that it places upon us. It incapacitates us. It prevents us from creating what we want more than a sad life story. Your attachment to your sad story may be deep, and it may be strong. It requires sustained discipline to remain vigilant of our thoughts and feelings, to see the story is just a story, not reality. As you continue paying attention to your thoughts and feelings, you discover that they have the creative power to actually shape your experience of reality. You see that the more you live in a sad story of your life in your head, the more that story grows increasingly real and inescapable. Your attachment to your sad story may be so deep and so strong that it returns over and over and over and over again, no matter how many times you release yourself from it. Within a few seconds, minutes, hours, or days, you find yourself back in your head, living in a sad, tragic version of your life. So you must be persevering. As you release yourself from your sad life story in your head, you release yourself to work creatively for the triumphant life that you want. Let go of the vision created by your dread. Release yourself from the sad story about your life in your head. If it returns, let it go again and again and again. You can let it go by shifting your attention from your thoughts into a direct experience of what is happening right now in the present. Or simply shift it by recognizing that your thought is just a thought. You have to choose. You have to choose between feeling sorry for yourself for not writing that book that you want to write and writing the book. You have to choose between feeling sorry for yourself for not making more money and applying yourself to the tasks aimed at making more money. You have to choose between feeling sorry for yourself for not spending all the time that you want with your children, all the time that you believe they need, and actually making adjustments little by little aimed at improving the balance in your life. You have to choose between entertaining a story about your marriage that keeps you feeling sorry for yourself for being stuck in a dissatisfying relationship and freeing yourself from the sorrow you feel by no longer entertaining that story. You have to choose between living in a sad story and living without one. You don't have to suffer in a sad life story. As you release yourself from the unconsciousness and the attachment that keeps you in your sad story, you liberate yourself to work in your natural state of joy. Joy is your natural state. You don't have to make yourself happy. You just have to stop making yourself so miserable with the sad and scary stories that you weave for yourself in your head. Living in sad stories is self-defeating. It's self-punishing. And you don't have to do it. Telling yourself that you cannot stop living in your sad story is just another sad story. The way to freedom is through alert awareness, directed to your mind, and it requires perseverance. You can only gain freedom slowly. If you've been living in sad life stories for years or decades, you have cultivated the habit of slipping into a sad story about your life when you encounter adversity, difficulty, or loss. Each time that you extricate yourself from a sad story, even if that freedom lasts only a moment, you enter more fully into your life as it is, into a life of natural joy and freedom. You free yourself from the habit of slipping into sad stories. Little by little, you lose the habit of engaging a sad and tragic story about your life, a story that drains you of energy and leaves you feeling more and more defeated. To release ourselves from tragic life stories, you need to get enough rest, because a fatigued state has virtually no defense against self-defeating stories. Sometimes, when you find yourself worrying about your life, all you really need is a nap. And after you get that rest, you wake up and you're worry-free. Your life hasn't changed. But you have. You've recharged your level of consciousness. You can recognize that your sad life story is nothing but a story. And you don't have to give it your attention, time, and energy anymore. And as you withdraw your attention, time, and energy from your sad life story, that sad life story comes to an end, and your natural, joyful life of creation grows stronger. You need to pay particular attention to your speech, or you can talk yourself more deeply into identification with your negative stories without even realizing it. Listen to the story about your life that you describe in your speech, particularly when you feel sad, anxious, or angry. Every time that you emotionally complain to someone, you portray yourself as a victim and send yourself more deeply into that sad story. If you're not feeling emotionally balanced, it's usually best not to speak, because you create a disappointment and despair. To determine if you are in emotional balance, pay attention, close attention, to how you feel in the moment. Practice living in an anxiety-free state, in a state free of discouragement. Anxiety underlines all unbalanced emotion. What we want is to be realistic. When you're realistic, you're naturally joyful. You're not fearing that something will or won't happen. You're at peace in the present moment. And that makes you just expect everything to work out fine, and it does. Examine your feelings all the time to determine if you're really at peace in the present, if you're really in a balanced state. When you feel emotional unbalance, that is not the time to dwell in your thoughts. That is the time to not take your thoughts seriously. Some people believe that they need fear to motivate them to take action. When you feel fear, look at the story playing in your head. It involves you in a sad and tragic story that becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. The more attention you give to a thought, the more reality you give to that thought. Haven't you learned from life by now that desperation is self-defeating? It arises from the story of yourself as a victim, as helpless and hopelessly dependent. The more you live in this sad story, the more true it becomes, as the very things, people, and experiences that you crave with such desperation recede farther and farther from your reach. Spend time every day considering what true success means to you. One reason to consider what success means to you is that you bring about what you think about. Thinking about what you want makes it happen. Impatience makes this process harder and longer than it needs to be. Concern yourself primarily with advancing through the open door of opportunity that presents itself before you now, however slight the progress that it seems to offer. Working too hard burns you out, runs you down, dulls your faculties, meaning that you actually accomplish less of real value and that you are more likely to make more costly mistakes. Feeling discouraged about where you are only serves to make it more difficult to progress. The only way for you to move up is to take your next best step from where you are. Pay very close attention to your thinking, to avoid dwelling on thoughts about what you do not want to happen to you because you bring about what you think about. There's a very important difference between worrying about what you fear may occur to you and engaging in constructive thinking that helps you to achieve what you want to happen. Once you know what you want to accomplish, the next step is to consider what you can do to contribute to that accomplishment. If you can't think of one thing that you can do to contribute to what you want to accomplish, you are probably demanding too much of yourself, struggling to come up with an action that will immediately produce the ultimate result that you're after. Faith is the power that permits miracles. Whenever you feel discouraged, pay attention to your thinking. You must be thinking of something discouraging to feel discouraged. When you see what you are thinking of, say to that thought, "You are just a thought." Then see if you can live without that thought. However you feel determines how you think. When you feel angry, you think angry thoughts. When you feel insecure, you think insecure thoughts. When you feel hopeless, you think hopeless thoughts. The key to remember here is to practice not thinking when you feel emotionally disturbed, because all your thinking can do at that time is to reinforce that emotional disturbance. When you feel upset, turn your attention to your feelings. Stop thinking and just observe how you feel. Don't resist your feelings. Observe them in a neutral way. Gradually, you will find your way back to peace. When you feel emotionally balanced, calm, confident, content, compassionate, you can think constructively. When you feel upset, unhappy, impatient, frustrated, dissatisfied, irritated, disappointed, or anxious, the only thinking you can do is destructive. Being responsible does not require you to worry about what is going to happen to you. As you release yourself from the story that fuels your desperation, you release yourself from the desperate plight you had believed yourself to be in. Whatever you are going through right now, your life is working out fine. You're headed in the direction of your greatest dreams coming true, or something even. And that's all the time we have for today's broadcast of Bob Lancer's Answers. To order a recording of today's show or of previous shows, and for more information about my work, check out my website at boblancer.com. That's BOBLANCER.com. And to create all you want that prevents you from living in your naturally joyful state of creation.